Welcome to the nurse station in basic ABG interpretation using arrows. Stay tuned or subscribe to my page. I'm soon going to put up a video that shows ABG interpretation with compensation. And with that method, we'll use a tic-tac-toe method, but this is just if your instructor is asking you to tell them whether the client is in metabolic acidosis, metabolic alkalosis, respiratory acidosis, or respiratory alkalosis. And this is a very simple method, again, that I said uses arrows to interpret your arterial blood gas level. So, FYI, I always like to talk about critical thinking for future nurses. The first thing you should always look at is your PaO2 level. Normal PaO2 level, I know I haven't written it up here because you don't need it to interpret the acid-base imbalance, is 80 to 100. If you ever see that level go less than 80 and the question is stating, what do I do first or what is my priority action, you don't even go on to interpret that ABG. If your arterial oxygen is less than 80, you now have a decreased oxygen problem, meaning you have decreased oxygen that's circulating in your body, and we need to fix that and fix it quickly. So if you ever see a low PaO2 level, that is your priority. That always trumps acid-base imbalances. So you should look for an answer such as administer O2 or raise the head of the bed, anything that will help improve oxygenation for that client. So back to ABG interpretation. ABG interpretation. First things first, you have to memorize your lab values. You need to know pH, PCO2, and your bicarbonate levels. You need to have it memorized. I highly recommend you writing it at the top of your test or your scratch paper, whatever you're allowed to write on prior to taking the exam. And then also, I need you to memorize these two rules. So, when I say opposite or arrows, it means if the pH is less than 7.35, you'd put a down arrow. If the pH is greater than 7.45, you put an up arrow. If the PCO2 is less than 35, down arrow, greater than 45, up arrow. Bicarbonate less than 22, down arrow, greater than 26, up arrow. So basic down or up arrows related to if the levels are high or low. So for it to be a respiratory disorder, your pH arrow and your CO2 arrow need to be opposite. So if my pH is high and my CO2 is low, respiratory. If my pH is low and my CO2 is high, respiratory. Those two arrows, if they're opposite, is a respiratory disorder. With metabolic, it is your pH and your bicarbonate level. These arrows would actually be going in the same direction. So to be a metabolic disorder, if my pH is high, then my bicarbonate level has to be high. If my pH is low, then my bicarbonate level has to be low. So simple arrows that we place next to our values. So the arrows only tell you if it's a respiratory versus metabolic disorder. To figure out if it's acidosis versus alkalosis, you just need to look at your pH. And you always need to remember, if my pH is less than 7.35, it's acidic or acidosis. If it's greater than 7.45, it's alkalotic or alkalosis. So let's start with our pH. Remember, critically thinking, you've already looked at your PaO2 level. Let's say it's 82, so oxygen is good to go. Let's start interpreting our ABGs. So let's first look at our pH. Is it acidic or alkalotic? It's less than 7.35. So this is an acidosis disorder. So go ahead and put your down arrow for pH because it's less than 7.35. My PCO2 level is actually 54, so it's high. Put an up arrow, and my bicarbonate level is normal. So don't put any arrow to that value. Well, my pH and my CO2 levels are in opposite directions, meaning this has to be a respiratory problem. So, on to the next one. pH is 7.5. It's greater than 7.45, making this an alkalotic or alkalosis disorder. And we know my pH level is high, so put your up arrow. My CO2 level is high, so we're going to put another up arrow. And my bicarbonate level is greater than 26, so it's high. This cannot be a respiratory disorder because it doesn't follow our rule. For it to be a respiratory disorder, pH and CO2 have to be opposite. But it does follow the second rule of my pH and my bicarbonate going in the same direction. So therefore, this has to be a metabolic disorder, making this acid-base imbalance metabolic alkalosis. Let's look at our next one. 7.47 is high, and it's an alkalosis disorder because, again, we remember when it gets greater than 7.45, it turns into an alkalotic state. My CO2 level is 30, making it less than 35 or below the normal range. And my bicarbonate level is 21, making it low as well. So let's remember our rules. My pH and my bicarbonate are opposites. That does not meet the rule of a metabolic disorder. But my pH and my CO2 level are opposite, which meets the rule. If pH and CO2 are opposite levels, it is a respiratory disorder. Making this respiratory alkalosis. On our last ABG we're going to interpret, our pH is 7.29, so it's less than 7.35, making it low and an acidosis disorder. My CO2 level is 35, that's actually normal, so I would not give it an arrow because normal CO2 is 35 to 45. And then my bicarbonate level is low. My pH and my bicarbonate level are in the same direction. And if we remember our rules, this is going to be a metabolic disorder because pH and bicarbonate are going in the same direction. So this will make this disorder metabolic acidosis. So I hope this helped you all. A very basic ABG, and I cannot talk today. ABG interpretation using arrows. And again, we are always better together. So if you can do it, please show another nursing student so they can be successful as well. Take care.